The best thing that another firefighter can say about a firefighter is he's one hell of a firefighter, or he's the best firefighter I ever worked with. That is the highest compliment that another firefighter can say. And I would like people to remember me as a hell of a firefighter and an incident commander that got the job done but took care of his people.
Chief Anthony, go.
The building was heavily involved with fire on at least one floor. There were 2 people trapped on the 37th floor above the fire, and we had identified a person on the 52nd floor with one of our helicopters. We had never experienced a fire in a high-rise building that the entire floor was involved. I arrived on scene and considerable amount of smoke coming out of the north side of the building. Firefighters on the interior in the books trying to put out the fire. I told Chief Drummond, I need to go into the building, and we went. Fire started at 4:31 in the morning. Helicopter pilots reported they had wind gusts of 104 miles an hour over the fire. The fire hit Beaufait Street. Within the first 20 or 30 minutes, there were about 15 homes that were destroyed. In a tunnel, it's different. I had been there, and I felt confident that I could take him in and do it. I told the chief, I said, you know, boss, in 1971, I was in the Sylmar Tunnel, and I said, I can go in there with the crew chief. I said, I know what the sounds are, I know what to look for. We can go put this fire out. There had been an explosion or a plane crash into a large condominium complex under construction. I think we had 60-some fire companies there. Then about 6 a.m., the San picked up a little bit, so we were having fun there for a while.
Don Anthony's leadership is really the personification of a definition of leadership. He got people to do what he wanted them to do because they wanted to perform for him.
Chief Anthony would never ask people to do something that he wouldn't do at a fire. Quite often, if things weren't going right at a large fire, he would go in to see for himself just exactly what was going on.
I've never known an officer in all my career that had the respect and admiration of the troops in the field, and he earned it.
Chief Anthony was approximately, I'd say probably 5'10", 5'11", weighed maybe 165, 170 pounds. Not a large man in stature, but a very huge man in command presence.
Don Anthony entering a fire building and never coming out of that building alive was a thought that had never entered my mind. He wasn't a person that could be destroyed by a fire. It wasn't possible.
Chief Anthony was probably the most inspirational fire chief I've ever known that was a firefighting chief. I think he was a deputy chief for about 15 years on this job. He had over 41 years on the department. He's an individual that I'll always admire.
Chief Don Anthony is a firefighter's fire chief. He's a leader. He's probably, in my opinion, the General Patton of the fire service. Always ready to go to the front lines to lead the charge. Knew his job inside and out. The consummate fire chief.
Highly professional.
Dynamic.
Dependable.
Compassion.
Dedication.
Integrity.
Respect.
Command presence.
Indestructible.
Anybody would follow him into the depths of hell. He's that good of a firefighter.
Well, I had no intention of being a firefighter in my early life, and then I was actually raised by a stepfather. I never knew my real father. When I was about 7 or 8, my mother remarried, and he was a firefighter, Rocky, we called him. He was a firefighter. That was in 1940 for LA City Fire Department. So from that point on, I grew up in a fire department family. I grew up over on the west side, actually in 43's, 92's First In District, off of basically Pico and Westwood Boulevard. My parents bought a home there right at the end of the war, I think probably 1945. I think they paid $6,200 for a brand new home. It was only 1,000 square feet, but basically grew up there, went to Hamilton High School, and spent most of my time over on the west side, if you will, and used to ride down to the beach, as I remember in those days. When I was in high school, I Went into the Navy Reserve when I was 16 years old. And then Korea came along. I graduated from high school and got called up in the military. I had an opportunity to become a Seabee, the construction battalion, and went out to, in the South Pacific, an island called Kwajalein, which was a critical runway bringing aircraft to and from Korea. Korean War ended, sent me up to Adak, Alaska in the Aleutian Islands, and I got discharged on December 31st, 1953, I believe it was, and I had had a football scholarship at several colleges before I went to service, so I chose and went to University of Arizona. So while I was at school, my father said, you know, Don, why don't you take the fire exam? You know, it's always something that you can have, and it's there. So to please him, I took the fire exam. At the time, I didn't know what a great opportunity I had and what a great career it would be. And I did go in the fire department in 1956. I became a firefighter, if you will, to please my stepdad, and it was the best decision I ever made in my life.
If you go back and again you look at the first interstate fire and his role in the first interstate fire as the incident commander, the decisions he had to make there were life and death, especially in whether they were going to abandon the building or whether they were going to maintain control of the fight in that building itself. But Chief Anthony made a courageous decision to continue the firefight, and they stopped the fire on the 16th floor. That was one of the issues, but that's where he was. He took charge. He was very positive. He had confidence when he made a decision, and you're able to work for him with that, and that confidence it gave you to continue to do your job.
I didn't take my first examination for promotion until I had 12 years on the fire department. When I was a firefighter, I wasn't concerned about being a captain. My goal was to be the best firefighter I could be. It happened that a significant event happened in my life. I got divorced. Had nothing to do with the fire department. Had a young son, and I said, you know, I'm going to study for promotion. The fire department is going to pay me for what I know, and I'm going to have an impact on how the fire department runs. I was just extremely fortunate that I had the opportunity for excellent assignments. Special duties, special projects, firefighting assignments. I had an opportunity to learn from the very best people there were on our fire department. Each new level made me appreciative of the lower ranks and the senior ranks in the department. And I was very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time and be prepared, I believe, from my side to be promoted. And in fact, for 14 years, when I was a deputy chief, actually assistant chief and then a deputy chief, I did not take a vacation. I was not married, and the fire department was 24/7. I wanted to be as good as I could be at what I was doing, and I wanted to have an impact on the department.
I responded with him to the library fire. It was a very difficult, tough fire, and he wanted to check and see just what was giving the troops so much trouble, so he donned breathing apparatus, and we actually went in on a hose line, and he took some heat. And in fact, he took so much heat, he had to be taken over to the medical division and treated briefly with some for debris in the eyes and smoke inhalation. And I know he took some heat because the next morning I had to take his helmet over to the shop and have it replaced because it was cooked. And it was just that type of hands-on approach to an emergency and a concern for his troops that gained him the respect of the field troops.
What I saw with Chief Anthony is his unsurpassed commitment to the fire department. His command presence on the fire scene, I think, was so effective because he had a strong basic knowledge of the operations of the fire department, and he knew what was to be expected on the fire ground.
As soon as he'd come on scene, whether it's at an incident or at a conference where something had to be coordinated, it was a mannerism that he displayed that you knew this person is in charge. There was a phrase where Anthony is on scene and in charge, and he would say that many times before he was even on scene, because in his way of thinking, the incident was already being developed in his mind and being processed in his mind before he got on scene.
Chief Anthony was probably the most inspirational fire chief I've ever known that was a firefighting chief. He's one that had credibility in the field because he'd never ask you to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. Many fires that he was at, his command presence helped lead firefighters into a successful mission. He got a Medal of Valor when he was a captain in this department going into a tunnel fire out in the San Fernando Valley. And he's just an inspirational person that has so much credibility, and you try to model yourself after him.
The impression that he made upon me as a firefighter and a staff assistant and a brand new officer, he just seemed to have a strong command presence. He had a good technical knowledge of firefighting and also a good understanding of the incident command system, and definitely encapsulated what a leader is. I
never met a person that was more dedicated and loyal. He was actually a workaholic. He'd come in there at 5:36 and work ungodly hours. He'd take work home with him. He'd be on call 24 hours a day. He'd give up all his holidays and vacation days. He truly loved it. In my 36 years on the fire department, I never met an officer that had the respect of his personnel and his peers like Chief Anthony.
There is a specific reason why we do certain things, and not following that or not following the orders in that chain of command, again, can cost you your life or create major problems for you, because your actions could cost someone else their life, including maybe one of your fellow firefighters. Having a firefighter killed with you in a fire is extremely difficult. More difficult is at 2 a.m. going and knocking on the door of his house. They know why they're there, why you're there when you open the door. Man. Get a little emotional about those still.
No, that's okay. Do you want to talk about the fire that you're on in the county?
There's an incident I was a pretty young firefighter, I think it was 59. Was at 27s, we had the big manifold net, and we went down into the county about 10, 11 o'clock at night into West Hollywood. Had a fairly large commercial building where they cleaned rugs and carpets. 3 of us went in there. 2 of us came out. And I think 2 of us were lucky to come out. We didn't know the other one didn't come out because we were buried. And he died at the incident. That was very emotional.
I recall one particular incident that was in the county of Los Angeles jurisdiction. It was a very large fire on the back lot at Universal Studios. And of course I responded to that incident early one evening, and Chief Don Anthony from the city fire department also responded, and we worked closely together. And Chief Anthony, as was his practice, very quickly went from the command post down to the front lines. And I remember later, when he came back covered with water and soot and debris and so forth, that he had saved the King Kong exhibit. And so I always held a special place in my memory of Chief Anthony saving King Kong. And I believe that's the type of fire officer and fire chief he was, able to save even the largest of monsters.
Growing up in the Anthony household, there was a lot to live up to. My dad was a very strict man. I went to military school for many years and enjoyed wearing a uniform. Growing up, I always had the thought that I would possibly be a firefighter, follow my father's footsteps. In 1984, I told him, I want to be a firefighter. My father's response at that point was to encourage me, and he was there for support, he was there for guidance.
Normally, when we go to the graduation, the chief engineer's there, and I know Chief Manning probably did it for me. He said, Don, I can't be at the graduation. Would you give the presentation, keynote speaker, and would you present the badges?
I felt very proud to receive my badge from my father. We got an opportunity to take some pictures with my uncle, who was a LA City fire captain, and my dad.
And it was a very, very proud moment for me, and today is a very proud moment for me every time I think about him and when I see people on the department and they'll say, you know, you really did a good job with that kid of yours, Chief. He's really a good asset to the department. That makes me feel so good.
In the late 80s, there was a Cessnon brush fire. It happened late in the evening, and it was at the north end of San Fernando Valley. The command post was very chaotic, a strong wind, a fire, homes threatened, homes were burning, and the impression that Chief Anthony made upon me was that once he got on scene, he went right to the command post and asked where were the companies assigned. After he determined the first names of the chiefs, he repositioned everybody and really kind of took control of the incident.
Laura Lee and I have been married now for just a little over 10 years. We met 20 years ago. And she's just one of those very special, positive people.
Don, as the chief, is an absolutely amazing man. Kind of bigger than life, I think, to a lot of us. But for me, he is probably the father I didn't have, the best friend, and somebody I could really count on for everything.
I think Laura has brought to my life a number of things. Certainly stability and caring in my personal life to my family. I was almost estranged from my family because of, I think, my commitment to the department and that commitment to who I thought I had to be. That I couldn't be warm and loving and caring, and I really didn't grow up in an environment of that.
He's a rock for anybody and everybody, but for me, he's the rock I never had. And that's probably the best way to describe him. It's just solid. He's just solid.
She has just brought so much into my life, and the last several years I've had a health challenge, and other than going on the fire department, she's probably the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'm very fortunate that she's in my life.
About 4 years ago, when he was diagnosed with cancer, it has been a progressive challenge for us, and it's remarkably changed the relationship not only with his family and friends, but with us. And it's like I affectionately say, it's the softer side of Don.
I think I had a unique and unusual perspective of Don Anthony, having worked for him and then having him working for me when I was the fire chief. Don was a lot more complicated personality-wise than I think people realize. The side that a lot of people didn't see is the compassionate side of Don Anthony. Most of our job, despite the glamour, is dealt in administrative matters, and he dealt with individuals involved in a variety of instances of discipline, supervision, those types of things. And he was very compassionate in dealing with people. Oftentimes I can recall where members would come up and be involved in very complicated things off of the job, and he would make recommendations that would surprise me. And that was a side of Don Anthony that I think most of our people don't ever realize that he had.
When he was the operations chief, one of our members was in some trouble and had to go in front of him because he was going to do some discipline for this member. After the session was over, as the member was beginning to leave the office, Chief Anthony reached into his pocket, took out a $20 bill, and told the member, go downstairs and get something to eat. Very touching and an experience that a lot of people don't know, that the side of Chief Anthony.
I guess by today's terms, I might be a softer, gentler kind of person on the department. I don't know if I would have been respected as much because, you know, there was one way to do things and that was my way. However, I always listened to people. And if it needed to be changed, it would be changed, whatever I was doing.
My father and I have a very good relationship now, and I think this relationship has gotten much better in the last few years. We have started to spend a lot more time together than we did in the past, partially because of his retirement, and he has the opportunity to spend more time with his family now, which is a good thing.
I mean, there's a gentle, caring, compassionate quality that was probably always there, but because of the role he played on the department, he couldn't allow that part to be seen, and now he does, and it's nice. I told him that in the 10 years we've been married, the last 4 have been the best because we're closer. One very early morning, there was a fire in a strip center, and it had a pet shop, and they insisted that all of the animals were safe. Well, Donald, being the big-hearted animal lover that he is, just had to go back in and check, and splashing through the water and all, he heard this little bitty meow in the background and went back, and this teeny tiny little white kitty just drenched sopping wet. Picked it up and cradled it in his arms and came out. It was like fireman saves cat, like the old days, and the little kitty in his arms. And to me, that spoke to the gentle man that was underneath all the rest of that. And that's my favorite picture.
Don Anthony's leadership is really the definition of leadership. He got people to do what he wanted them to do because they wanted to perform for him. And I can remember as a captain in planning, I was studying for battalion chief with Ken Willihan, who was working as Don Anthony's adjutant at that time. And we had a little study group that we worked together, and so we would compare notes back and forth. And I can remember Ken coming in one day and saying to me, hey Bill, Anthony's slipping. I said, slipping? What do you mean? We always compared ourselves to him. Everyone wanted to. He says, he's slipping. I said, what do you mean slipping? Well, he only remembers back 1,500 years. He doesn't remember back all the way beyond that. And that was just a classic Anthony because he had a photographic memory. 1,500 years for other people would be unbelievable. For Don Anthony, it was a shortcoming.
He was a dynamic leader, but a guy who was a mentor also. You know, if you needed something, if you wanted to know something, if you had a gain from his experience, he was always available to meet with you and talk with you.
Chief Anthony is a firefighting chief, and he has the integrity that everybody would like to have in this department.
The greatest impact that a person can have on another person is when you change that person's life. The impact that Don Anthony had changed my life. I wasn't very comfortable being a firefighter. I did not realize that I had the potential or the ability to be an officer on this department. He recognized that early in my career, and he gave me advice, and as I said before, as a mentor to teach and to show the things that I needed to be successful.
When he showed up, when he asked that things be done, there was really never any question as to what he wanted done, and then the people were more than happy to follow those orders.
I would have to say that in my mental dictionary, when I look up fire chief, I would see Don Anthony's image.
Leadership,
Work ethics.
Uncompromising character.
Risk taker.
Professional.
A fireman's fireman.
Firefighting chief.
Firefighter.
There are a lot of wonderful firefighters out there, but there's only one Chief Anthony. The man is a legend. He's just one of a kind.
the integrity of the department, I think, is embodied by Chief Anthony, and it's something that we are all very proud of. We're proud of the contribution he's made to the department and the legacy that he leaves behind.
I was very fortunate in my life. I got to live a dream, and that dream was to be a firefighter. My father, there's 3 generations of the Anthonys on the fire department. One will remain. Our family goes back more than half of the history of this department. And I will tell you, you do have the best fire department in the world. I thank you for the 40 years that I got to live the dream. Thank you.